Bueno, a continuación tenemos el honor y el privilegio de tener un profesor de MIT y emprendedor que se dedica a estudiar y impulsar, como ya anunciaba en mi presentación, las redes colaborativas de innovación. Él también ha preparado una exposición, va a ser un keynote, pero por la hora no va a ser tan largo, ya lo hemos tenido bastante copado en esta universidad haciendo clase en el magíster. Peter Gloor, I'm going to switch in English because I think Peter has been a little bit lost in translation, but he understands a little bit of Spanish. But ¿es true? Okay. Entonces, mientras se prepara Peter Gloor y lo introduzco, le damos las gracias al señor ministro Pablo Longueira, lo dejamos comprometido para Antofagasta y para el 12 del 12 del 12 a las 12, y muchas gracias, señor ministro, por venir a acompañarnos en esta sesión. So, now I have the honor and privilege to introduce you Professor Peter Gloor, research scientist from the MIT Center for Collective Intelligence. He's also a professor, distinguishing visiting professor at our Innovation Master Program at Catholic University. He has a long trajectory of being an entrepreneur, being a professor, being a researcher, being in the corporate world, and I have asked him to give a short keynote on collaborative innovation networks and entrepreneurship. Peter has a PhD in computer science, a postdoc at MIT, and he has been trying to understand and track and predict the future in many levels, including entrepreneurship and innovation. So please welcome Peter to the launch ceremony of Jump Chile.
So I would like to share with you the lessons I learned studying how people work together, because the key insight of my professional career of the last 20 years was I can be as creative as I want, but in the end it all depends on you, on others. And that's why after 10 years in industry, working for a big bank, working for 2 consulting firms, I decided to go back to academia and look at how collaborative innovation networks change the world, and in particular, what entrepreneurs can learn from that. And in the next half hour, what I would like to do is tell you how you can be cool, so that you are like the girl carried away by success. What does it take to be the next Facebook, Google, whatever you name it? And in order to do that, I think we need to answer 2 questions. The first one, what is cool? Which immediately raises a second question, what is hot? You might think it's the same, but there is actually a big difference, and that picture might give you a hint. This is a really hot girl, but it's hiding something cool behind it. And that's the point I would like to make. It's very easy to be hot. You can sell your ideas by hiring a pretty girl and everybody will look. But there is a dog driving the car in here. Well, I don't think it was really, the dog was really driving the car in that picture. But if it were a dog, let's think we have a Google car. How cool it would be, you don't have to drive to the traffic every morning anymore coming to Santiago. I already experienced rush hour and it's no fun. Let's say you had such an automatic car, how cool would that be? And that's the topic of my presentation. I would first like to share with you how we can find those cool ideas. And cool normally for me means it's not just for me, it's for us. Cool is what is for a community, for a group of like-minded people. And there are two aspects to the power of cool. The first one is cool hunting. Where are the cool ideas? And the next one is cool farming. How can we help those cool ideas succeed? And for me, I find that answer in social networks. So the topic is cool hunting, and in order to hunt for cool ideas, what we have been applying is a concept called social network analysis, which means that we look at how people interact with each other, and then we construct networks. Now, I take it all of you are users of Facebook and Twitter, and that means that you think you have an understanding how those social networks work, but the point is there's an entire mathematical theory behind it, but no worries. I will not talk about mathematics this evening. I just want to share with you how you can actually look for those cool ideas. And there is one basic idea, and that's if we look at those networks in Twitter, in Facebook, and on the web, unfortunately, not everybody is equal. There is really a three-class society in the online world. And to explain the idea, I would like to take you to Paris. I was there a few years ago, and I was looking for a restaurant, cool hunting for a restaurant. So the first evening, that's where we ended up, and you might perhaps recognize where that is. It's Montmartre. That's the ultimate tourist trap, where you get not the best food at a relatively high price. The point is, that's what the wisdom of the crowd gets you. And the problem is that the wisdom of the crowd really easily flips to the madness of the crowd. Just look at the e-business bubble burst, or like the mortgage bubble very recently. The crowd turns crazy very easily. Nevertheless, the crowd can feed us. However, the next evening in Paris, we tried another approach, and we asked the expert, the concierge in the hotel. And we got better food at a really high price, and still a lot of tourists. The problem is, that's what you get when you ask the expert. Experts always have a hidden agenda. They want to sell their services. I can speak from experience, so allow me to say some not so nice things about consultants. But in my own shoes, whenever I was doing a consulting project, of course I had one overarching objective, the next consulting project. And if on the side I was capable of making my customers happy, of course that was a good way of winning my customers, but the overall objective was something for myself. And that's the problem with experts. So really the best thing for us is what we got the third day when we were looking for a restaurant, following the swarm in Chambre, the bees. In that case, it was the local Paris people, and the way to do that is for elegant women that speak very fast French. And so we tried that trick, and it worked very well for us. We got by far the best dinner at a very low price. And so that's what cool hunting really means. You have to make the distinction between the crowd, and the crowd gets you sometimes to the destination, but it might not always be right, and it might not be the best. The expert, fine too, but they always have a hidden objective. By far the best is to find the swarm. And so the question is, how are we finding those swarms? Because the swarms, they are the intrinsically motivated people, and they are the ones that have the power of cool. The technology we are using, social networks, social network analysis, it basically means that we construct network like the one here, where not everybody is equal. Some people are more equal than others. In this case, it's Steve Coleman, who is the most central person, and we construct those social networks trying to find the most influential people so that they take us to the swarm. And in this example here, we have jazz musicians playing together, and the connecting line means two jazz musicians are playing together. And you can easily see from the picture that the most influential person, Steve Coleman, he's the most influential by two criteria. He has the highest numbers of friends, but frequently that's not enough. We will come to that, because we did a lot of studies analyzing entrepreneurship networks in the real world and in the online world, and trying to see what sort of networking makes an entrepreneur successful. And that you are sitting here and will be networking later on, I can already tell you that's a great recipe for success. If you don't believe me, you can read many papers that we have published. That's usually what academics do. But in the case of this network here, we have Steve Coleman, who knows many friends, but he also knows influential friends. And in a sense, that's like Michelle Obama. We know there is Barack Obama, he is very influential, but there is somebody behind the scenes. And if we find those hidden influencers, we know what they are up to, they will tell us what's happening next. And that's what we mean by cool hunting. Trying to find those most influential people, and ideally many friends, which is no problem. If you are Michelle Obama, you probably have many friends. Anyway, everybody wants to be a friend. But she's also connected to the most powerful man on earth, and that's what really makes her powerful. And so that's the sort of people we would like to find. And now, what does this mean for an entrepreneur? What sort of people would you like to find? The cool people. So what are the coolest people? For me, I have developed a framework or a method of finding those creative swarms, and to describe how those creative swarms work, I would like to take you into my own past. 20 years ago, when, as a young postdoc, I came to MIT. I had gotten my PhD in computer science from the University of Zurich, and I was fortunate enough to work in the Advanced Networking Architecture group at MIT, developing a system called CyberMap, which was a little bit before the web, 1990, 1991. And I was also lucky because my paper was accepted at an academic conference in San Antonio in Texas. And so I dragged my big and clunky Macintosh there to demo the system and also to present it at the conference. And then this person came. Now, I don't know whether any of you recognizes it, just curious. Anybody has an idea? Just a little hint. He's much older now, and he participated in the London Olympics in the opening ceremony. Yes, exactly, Tim Berners-Lee. And at that time, in 1991, nobody had an idea who he was. And so he came to my booth and he asked me whether he could put up a pile of flyers, because he had sent in a paper to the conference which was turned down. And I was a member of the program committee also at that time, but it seems the program committee didn't think the paper had any scientific merit. It was just not academic enough, and everybody thought this would never succeed. Tim didn't care. He had a crazy idea, just any startup entrepreneur has. But he was very persistent, so he put up this pile of flyers. he invited people to a special session, a birds of a feather session during lunch, because he couldn't really present his paper. And he succeeded in getting a small group of people, and this small group of people, that's the startup. These 3 to 5 people, in his case, they were postdocs, and they were doctoral students, so they worked for free. And that's what happens with startups too. In the beginning, you have no money, just great ideas and a few friends. So he was recruiting them, and together they turned his crazy idea into a product. He was also trying to recruit me, because I was obviously working in the same area. However, I thought that he would never succeed, and I had better things to do. I needed to promote my academic career. But my boss, David Clark, who was the head of the Internet Engineering Task Force at that time, that was what we were doing. We were doing very geeky things like TCP/IP and writing email clients. And my job was to invent some things that would create bandwidth so that other people would use our fast networks. So David Clark, he was much smarter than me. He invited Tim to MIT. However, we had no office for him. He was only getting a small desk in the hallway and an old and clunky computer. He didn't care. He came anyway, which of course tells you the first of my, or another one of my insights. It's better to be a little fish in a big pond than a big fish in a little pond. In his case, it worked extremely well because he was using the big pond to grow and grow until by now his system really has become a huge fish. So in the case of the web, Tim used the MIT platform very wisely. He grew his community, and the group of the 3 to 15 grew to a few hundred, and they started further developing the web. The World Wide Web Consortium was created at MIT, and over time, it dawned on me that the web, after all, might not be such a bad idea. So when Tim organized the first conference in Geneva, back to Switzerland, at CERN, because that's where he was working, I wanted to go too. However, it was too late, because by now the thing had taken off. They were expecting 80 people for the first conference. They had reserved the biggest room of 300, and 500 had signed up, so I had to stay at home. And then there was another guy named Mark Andreessen who created a browser called Mosaic, which became Netscape, and then the thing was unstoppable. But this also shows you that you need both. First, make it cool, then make it hot. Hot, in this case, easy to use, accessible to everybody. It's also hard sometimes. In marketing, it's relatively easy. Get a pretty girl and sell your stuff, and things work. Making it cool, finding your swarm, that's the hard part. And that's what you need your friends and family, your collaborative learning network, to try things out, and just spreading the concepts. So cool hunting means getting creative swarms to work, finding a creative swarm, and cool farming means helping them succeed. And if you think this works only for the internet or the web, that's not really the case. In fact, I think any disruptive innovation works like that. And even if you start disruptive innovation inside a company, then the company normally will not let you grow it because it destroys existing things. And that's, if you look, there is a famous academic, Clayton Christensen, who has studied disruptive innovation. Even if you look at like the hard drive industry, which started at IBM, then the things will, the managers will try to kill it because it eats into their existing business. And so the people that created it, they will leave, they will go outside, and they will start a new company outside. One of the best examples of disruptive innovation, of open source innovation, is Linux, because it really illustrates a great point. You need coins, collaborative innovation networks, but coins are really about everything but coins. It's not about money. It's about your idea and your product. And if you really get it off the ground, the reward will come by itself. Linux is even more impressive than the World Wide Web. At least Tim got the ticket from CERN to go to San Antonio and sell his system. Linus Torvalds, he was sitting in a bedroom in Helsinki and he was developing his Linux system, and then he just wrote an email. I just created a Linux system. It's nothing special. Feel free to use it. But please, if you make any changes, send them back to me for everybody to share. And then I will distribute it again to the community. And that worked so well that in about the same time, Linux gained popularity at about the same speed as the web. And this sharing of ideas is really an important point. And I call that the 199 rule. Give away 99% of what you create and keep the decisive 1% for you. And looking at innovation in the Silicon Valley, the entrepreneurs there, they can't wait to tell you about your great idea. And on the other hand, they will always be just a tiny little bit ahead of the others, and that's what keeps them alive, and that's what keeps their startup successful and growing. And there are really zillions of examples. Another of my favorites, Lego Mindstorms. I'm sure all of you know Lego. You might not know Mindstorms. It's programmable Lego bricks. They have been created at the MIT Media Lab, and by now they are a highly successful product. And the point is, when the Mindstorm product was launched, it was hacked. 1 week after it came out, software hackers, they cracked the code and they started making their own changes. And Lego, for a month or so, didn't know what to do, but then they decided to embrace the hackers, and it worked beautifully for them. It's now a $1 billion product, and the biggest part of the software development is done for free by the hackers. And the hackers even pay their own tickets once a year to come to Denmark and tell Lego about the next development and the great ideas they would like to have incorporated. And if you look at companies like Google or Facebook, they work the same. They give away basically 99% for free. They keep 1% for themselves, and that has made them super valuable companies. The Google search engine, super useful for us, they keep just one little piece. Who is searching what where? $30 billion. Facebook, we can use it all for free, but they aggregate the information. Now, I'm still speculating up to today whether Mark Zuckerberg was using similar algorithms as we are using for predicting the future when he did the IPO, because the pricing was so perfect. It was the absolute maximum that he could squeeze out, and then it went down. So that shows you how valuable that piece of information is. Who is thinking what, when, where? And there are many more examples. There are things like writing a book, the Twilight series. You might have seen the movies. Stephanie Meyer is great in having the story being written by her readers. On her blog, she asks the most fanatic readers, how should I take the story further? And so it worked very well for her. Super bestseller. And then we get things like snowboarding and mountain biking, and they are also very much user-driven innovations. So that is the pattern of swarm creativity, and that's for me how every successful startup should work. Applying the 199 rule. Now the question is, how do those people do it? How can they make things cool? I get very much inspired from the bees. And the bees, they have developed a very efficient language how they communicate, how to find the next honey source. And what's an entrepreneur doing other than finding the next honey source? Bees, they do the waggle dance. That's how they communicate. And a single bee is highly unpredictable. A beehive, a bee swarm, is very predictable. And the same thing goes for when we do the cool hunting. We can never predict what a single person is doing, but we can predict some things which with amazing accuracy up to 6 years into the future, and we will share some example. It ranges from trying to predict the gold price. Wikipedia actually gives an answer there. Wikipedia has a great swarm. I will come to that in a minute. But let's now look at how Tim Berners-Lee has been able to get the worldwide off the ground. Just to share a few lessons. The human waggle dance. I'm not waggle dancing right now. I think I'm just not good enough. But Tim Berners-Lee, he stands out in 3 criteria. The first one, we have spoken about that, connectivity. And what that means, he has many friends, and he also has important friends. How did he do it? By being very humble in the beginning and deciding to be a small fish in a big pond, and then grow his network from there. So you want many friends, you want influential friends. But that's not enough. When Tim Berners-Lee was sitting at his hallway desk, he was very active waggle dancer. He was sending out a lot of emails and answering to them really quickly. He was super responsive. And this way of being super responsive, which actually works 2-way, that's the second one. And you can try that for yourself. Let's assume you are gone from your office work. You don't have your iPhone with you. I know it's highly unlikely. But let's say you are in Ghana or at the place where you have no chance to be connected at all, and when you come back you have 500 emails waiting for you. The ones you choose first. That's Tim Berners-Lee. The most important people for you. If you work for a big company, it's the CEO. If you are a startup entrepreneur, it might be the venture capitalist giving you a lot of money, but this is one of those hidden signals that we are trying to unlock. Just like the waggle dance of the bees. It also works the other way around. If I send an email to Bill Gates, who cares? Everybody can send an email to Bill Gates. If he responds to my email in 30 seconds, I must be Michelle Obama. So just looking at speed of communication, and we have studied that in many different ways. We look at that on the face-to-face level. We have developed, or we have used sociometric badges developed at the MIT Media Lab. They are about twice the size of this little thing. We put them around the neck of the people we are studying, and then we measure how people communicate. And they have 4 types of sensors. They have an infrared sensor, that means I would wear one, you would wear one, and then the more we look into each other's eyes, the better. That's one of those honest signals. But there is more to it. There is an accelerometer which measures my energy level. And then it also measures your energy level, and if we start swinging in sync, great coin. We are starting to work together. We tried that out with jazz musicians, for example. Then it also has a microphone. It does not record what you say because people don't like that so much, but it measures who is talking. And the more turns we take, the better. And then it also has a Bluetooth sensor that measures whether we are close or whether we are far. And that's those 4 signals that will give away how good of a collaborator you are face to face. And the point is, Absolutely the same thing is also true on the organizational level, looking at email, and on the global level, looking at Twitter and Facebook. If you tweet and 500 people retweet you, you must be super influential. If Camila Vallejo tweets, other people retweet what she says. So that's really a great predictor. The number of followers on Twitter, that's okay, but that's easy to gain. But the ratio of how many people you follow to how many people are following you, that's really another honest signal. Justin Bieber, he is sort of the nobility, he's the most influential Twitterer. He has 20, 30 million followers, and he follows a few hundred. Same for Barack Obama. So that's another of those honest signals. If you blog and write a blog post and 5 minutes later, 20 other blogs link back to your blog post, you must be super influential. So looking at those sort of hidden signals will help us find the next Tim Berners-Lee. And the third point that sets Tim and Linus Torvalds and Jimmy Wales and Mark Zuckerberg and Larry Page apart is degree of sharing, the 199 rule. And I have had many discussions with students that tell me, I have such a great idea, but I'm afraid to tell it because otherwise others will steal me. Well, then I have to say that's wonderful, but you will die with your great idea. So just keep the 1% and tell the 99%. And in the case of Tim Berners-Lee, he was sharing 100% and it still works for him. So that's what sets those most influential people apart. And we can find them by doing automated content analysis of their email, by looking at their interaction patterns face-to-face, or by looking at their tweets. And if we construct the networks, they will not look like this little star. That's very hierarchical. By the way, this is a marketing team in a German bank. They have been wearing those badges, and whenever 76 wants to talk to 88, they have to go through 65. And that's not really what innovative people do. Rather, we get networks like this one, where everybody talks to everybody. That's much better for innovation. And so now we know what sort of people we are trying to look for. To put it in one sentence, it's people that are not stars, but people that are galaxies. Don't be a star, be a galaxy. As an entrepreneur, that's one of the key things. If you have seen the movie The Social Network, Mark Zuckerberg, he had many fights, but overall, he was still very successful in doing his pool parties in parallel with starting his companies, at least if the movie is true. So that's sort of the key insight, and now let's look at some examples where we studied entrepreneurs. The first one on the global level was 100 software startups in Israel, where in 1998 we looked at how did they communicate with each other. So a PhD student asked each of those 100 CEOs of those startups, with whom of your 99 competitors are you talking? And that allowed us to construct a network like the one that you see here. And then, 6 years later, we checked which of those 100 companies was still around. It turns out 42 went out of business. So here we were able to look 6 years into the future, because it turns out the way how in 1998 the CEOs communicate predicts very well which of the companies 6 years later are still around. And there is 3 criteria that set those entrepreneurs apart. The first one, and by far the strongest, was willingness to answer on its question in 1998. Or to put it in other words, if you collaborate with academics, that's good for your future. I always love to tell that story to our sponsors. So the next one was, the more in 1998 the CEO spoke with their competitors, the higher the chance for survival. So it's good to be here and to communicate and to talk with each other. The third one, which was almost a little bit frightening, was the non-surviving CEOs communicated. They spoke with other non-surviving CEOs. And the point is, but in 1998 they couldn't know it. But it seems we have some sort of sensors, and we get together with other people like us, and in their case they might be a little bit more introvert, and they might be a little bit less willing to talk each other, and so they got attracted to those. But the bottom line here is, it pays to talk with your competitors. But emphasis is on talking. At that time, it was still face-to-face communication. And so, a few years later, we wanted to see whether that was still true in the virtual world. Because now we have Facebook, and we have LinkedIn, and we have Twitter. And so we repeated the same experiment, but this time we took Xing, which is the German equivalent of LinkedIn, and we had 15,000 entrepreneurs in Germany, and their network with 900,000 other people. And again, we tracked them over an extended period of time, because you cannot really do such an experiment in one snapshot, otherwise you will not know what's the chicken and what's the egg. Do you just have many friends because you are successful? Or are you indeed successful because you have many friends? If, however, you look over a period of time and you measure how the success changes, you can tell. So, for the Israeli entrepreneurs, survival was our metric of success. Here, we had a lot of student assistants just looking up 900 of those companies in business databases 2 times over 18 months. And then we found that it does not really pay to network electronically. The more friends you have in LinkedIn, the less successful you are as an entrepreneur. Don't waste your time just networking to death electronically and collect many Facebook or LinkedIn friends. It might be nice for your ego, but it doesn't really help in your business. Now, entrepreneurs have 2 or 3 times as many friends as non-entrepreneurs in LinkedIn, but successful entrepreneurs have less friends in LinkedIn than non-successful entrepreneurs. And we were particularly interested in alumni of selective universities. So, and what we found, that there the picture is very different. So, if you are at the Harvard Business School, network to death. The more friends at the Harvard Business School you get, the better for your business. I can confirm that. I have no MBA from Harvard, just from the University of Zurich, no MBA, simple PhD. So I made it up to e-business leader for Deloitte of Europe, and my boss, of course, Kathy had an MBA from Harvard, and her boss, the CEO, of course, he had an MBA from Harvard. So it pays to get an MBA from a top university. It's not really what you learn, but it's who you get to know there. As far as having other friends, it doesn't really matter. You can have them or not. It neither helps or hurts you. We repeated that with another project where we looked at participants in a program just like Chile by looking at their LinkedIn network and checking how successful those entrepreneurs are. And Romina and Cristobal will be delighted to hear that we found that if you participate in such programs, that in fact predicts your success. We also checked who was a good predictor of success. So that means if you participate in Chile and you network with me, does it help you? Or should you network with Romina or with Cristobal? The answer is you should network with those guys. We looked at degrees of separation in the LinkedIn. That was LinkedIn. That was SwissNext where we did the experiment, which is a Swiss incubator in Cambridge. And we looked at proximity to the head of the program, and the closer entrepreneurs were in their networks to those, to the director, the better for the success of their startup. Now, we also wanted to know whether proximity to venture capitalists predicts success, and the answer is it depends. Being close to a famous venture capitalist doesn't really help you. Everybody wants to be close to a famous venture capitalist. But, that was quite surprising, not so famous venture capitalists, they were very good. And that's my interpretation in sniffing out new promising startups. So if you are close to those junior venture capitalists, that's actually good for you. So those are some of the insights we got from studying the external world and how you should communicate with others, with your peers. We also, by the way, wanted to know with whom, besides your peers, should communicate. And we found that the more contacts to lawyers and bankers you have, the better for your business success. Which you might say it's obvious, but here we had the database to prove it. So we have also done many projects internally where we looked at email networks inside organizations, and we have been trying to understand what creates those coins inside the company and makes them successful. The process is always the same. We have a corporate intranet, we take the email archive, we take Twitter or corporate internal Facebook, we construct the social network, we look at the coins, the collaborative innovation networks, and we compare that with success or failure. And that will tell us what sort of communication is actually good for business success. How should you communicate inside of your company, inside of your team? And here is an example where we studied the 15,000 researchers at a very big children's hospital, Cincinnati Children's Hospital, and we got their mailboxes and we studied the amount of new ideas and new startups they created. Just by looking at how team members communicated. And our way of cool farming was to mirror back their communication networks to everybody and showing them what sort of communication networks was successful in creating those sort of new enterprises, new ideas, new innovations. And here you see a group of people working together. You see the red dots. This is all the team members. We only got the mailboxes of 7 people. And the blue dots and the green dots and the brown dots, that's the outside life of each of the team members. So they uploaded all their mailboxes. Each dot is a person. That means the mailboxes of 7 people gave us 20,000 people or so. And you see the outside life and you see the project life, that's the red dots. And then you see how they start communicating with each other. They start doing the waggle dance. In this case, it was a project around Crohn's disease, or also called inflammatory bowel disease, where we got researchers in Crohn's disease. They were the ones that initiated the project. But then we added patients of the disease. We added caregivers of patients, that means parents and spouses. And we added doctors. So we got the perfect swarm. And we measured how many new ideas, and there are already a few startup enterprises. For example, a Facebook platform called Chronology. Crohn's disease, chronology, that came out of it. But here we see how the original team members, they did their waggle dance, where they were advertising their idea to as many people as possible. At MIT there is the one saying, demo or die. That means tell as many other people as you can what great things you are doing. And here we can measure that easily. Another point which is very important, at least for creative teams, it's not true, for example, for call centers or for nurses in a hospital, which we also analyzed. But in a startup setting, we call that rotating leadership. That means if you exchange your leaders a few times along the way, then that's very good for getting new ideas. And then, in the end, you can make things hot. Making things hot means you spread your pheromone, your perfume, and then you get your ideas out. And in this case, you already see how new startups, new coins are emerging from the initial one, doing chronology. And we had another project, Ginger.io, another startup with MIT Media Labs with students that was developing sensors that would predict a flare. So many innovative ideas coming out from there. So that's on the organizational level. And now let's just wrap up by sharing some insights on the individual level for you as a participant, as the founder of a startup. How should you communicate? And I have spoken about rotating leadership. The point how we did, or the way how we discovered this, we looked at Eclipse open source developers. Who knows what Eclipse is? Okay, so we have a few software people. I was just wondering. And the others might be entrepreneurs in other areas. And so we looked at those Eclipse developers, and we measured their productivity in the speed of fixing software bugs, and we measured their creativity in the speed of developing new features. And what we found, productivity and creativity are negatively correlated, which is sort of not what you want to hear. You can either be productive or you can be creative. And of course, our goal now is to do social engineering and get teams that are both creative and productive. Here you see the network going back and forth between star structure and galaxy structure, and it turns out this is the networking structure that predicts creative teams. If you get rotating leadership, if it flips back and forth between having one guy in the center and sending out his creative ideas to all others, and then all others start talking among themselves, and then the next person assumes leadership, if you get that oscillation pattern, that will predict creative teams. If, on the other hand, you have a structure like this one, only stars or only galaxies, that's good for productivity but not for creativity. So this is one of the insights. If you want to have creative ideas, things will go up and down, just accept it. It will happen anyway. Now, we also looked at teams in an even closer setting with those asymmetric badges. Here you see them, and by now they are marketed by an MIT Media Lab startup called Asymmetric Solutions that is doing projects with call centers of banks and also with the US Army. And when you wear them, by the way, just wearing them will tell us whether you are neurotic, open for new things, agreeable, reliable, and introvert or extrovert. So no need anymore to do any personality tests, just wear those badges for a little period of time and we know who you are. But we had software developers in a company wear those badges and compare the way how they communicated with their creative output. And what we found is that the best predictor of creative ideas was the amount of trust that team members had to each other. And by the way, what we found is that the more team members look at each other and the less the other person speaks, the higher the trust. We also looked at jazz musicians, and what we found there is that the more the musicians are in flow, which means they had their badges in their pants, they didn't want to have them around their necks because they would be jumping around too much while they were playing the sax or the guitar or the bass or whatever. But the more they were starting to jump around, and this was the accelerometer, so we got like 1,000 measurements per second, and it was not really visible to the naked eye, but the more they swing in parallel, the better. It's the strength of the applause. So that's what we call group flow, and that's the sort of thing that you want to get. So to resume, what are the 4 steps of cool farming? I have spoken about the creator. You have the Tim Berners-Lee. He gets his coin, his group of like-minded souls together. They get the bigger group of friends of family, the collaborative learning network. And then in the end, you have the collaborative interest network. And what you want to be is the bee queen. You need strong centralized leader. Coming from a democratic country, from Switzerland, I thought everybody is equal. There is no need for centralized leaders. Well, I found the opposite is true. You need Larry Page and Mark Zuckerberg and Steve Jobs and whoever. Otherwise, it doesn't work. But they need to rotate. And you need to understand that there are phases along the life where you have to delegate. And Tim was very good in that. And he would pass on responsibility to the other person, and he would give credit. Linus Torvalds is a master in that game. You need to waggle dance a lot. You need to interact with your swarm to make the thing cool, and in the end, once you have figured it out, you can spread the attraction pheromone and make it hot. So how can you be cool? Here is the answer. You need to have a coin. You need to have a core team that works together very closely. Try to create your coins, your collaborative innovation network. Have leadership that passes on from one to the other. Be super responsive. And another thing we found, it's good to be positive. It's bad to be negative. It's best to be honest. If you have, and we did that using machine learning and looking at email and comparing that with success. The more honest the language, the farther the spread, the better for the success. And as far as looking at people face-to-face goes, it's good to let others speak and get as much trust inside your team as possible. And that's it for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter, for such an inspirational and insightful talk for our present and future entrepreneurs, where they need, in order to get coins, monedas, from our awards, they need to create internal coins. Question, comments? Peter is leaving Chile and Catholic University in 2 days, so if someone has a comment or a question, Nicolas.
I have a question about diversity. When you hear one of these talks, one thinks there's a one way to do things, but that's not the case, is it?
No, there is never just one way. And diversity leads to chaos, but innovation needs chaos. And so this is actually good. Now, it really depends on the task, and there is some research looking at NSF-funded projects in the US, and what they found, you can have too much diversity, and you need strong leadership. But embracing that, knowing that, passing leadership on from one to the next, but somebody should be in charge. I even call that the 1-9 90 rule, which I discovered when we started Wikipedia. You might think in Wikipedia everybody is equal. The answer is it's not. 1% of the people does 90% of the work. 9% of the people do 9% of the work. 90% of the people does 1% of the work. In Wikipedia we have the numbers to prove, and in the meantime my insight is that this is basically true for most real-world settings, even for companies. And it also translates to the coin, the 1%, the learning network, the 9%, and the interest network. They are just casual users, the 90%.
Thank you.
I think there was one here.
Yes, I would like to know how you can build this model into a cluster analysis in the way that if you have in a cluster, for example, an industry, they want to produce a new innovative product in order to be more productive and to get a better product for a big company, for example. So you have this collaborative innovation network, but as they want to create an innovative product for their own, for one company, is very hard to create this collaboration. Also, maybe this learning and interest network. Maybe it works for a business or business to customer model more than business to business model. What's your?
I wouldn't say that. We have studied, for example, work with BASF, and that's a business to business company. And obviously, they are afraid of disruptive innovation, and so the solution is you outsource it. You have some innovation centers where you give them the freedom to do that. And it works as well in B2C as B2B, and overall, you will find the coins. Coins are everywhere. Just start searching for them, start embracing them, and in a sense, by now we have done hundreds of projects. The projects we have been doing, they wouldn't really need us. And the ones that are not asking us, they would sorely need us. What I mean by that, normally the leaders of those projects are already doing the right thing. They communicate a lot, and they encourage others to take on responsibility. And so they are very open to what we are doing, and they are just doing more of the same. And the others, when we have strong hierarchies, they will never come and ask us.
Hi. You first said about sharing the 99% and keeping the essential 1. My question is regarding that. If you share the 99, wouldn't it be easy for someone that knows what you're doing or the area that you're doing to figure out that 1%?
Well, I think if it's easy for others to copy you, you will always have a problem. And my experience doing a startup is never easy. It's hard. It takes a long time. Tim Berners-Lee, he was 10 years at it. Facebook, I think Mark Zuckerberg started 2003 or so, and it took him quite some time to grow it. That means you know much more than anybody else because you have been struggling and bending and shaping it, and it's that little difference. And the things I have told you are not rocket science. They are all what I call intuitively non-obvious. As soon as I tell you, you say, of course, that's how it had to be. They become obvious. It took us 20 years to figure them out. And there's always a tiny, I didn't tell you how I predict the gold price. I didn't really tell you how the software works. So I'm always for sharing, except if it's crystal clear I shouldn't share it. And for example, we have our own startup, we have the software that we use to predict those things, and it's not open source.
All right, thank you. So just another thing, super smart. I loved it. One of the things I love about GitHub, for example, is the power of sharing your codes with any other guy and brag about it. But I found that, for example, I don't know if you know the Startup Genome Project from Max Marmer in Silicon Valley. So they're doing a study about the people, the entrepreneurs behind the startups. And they created a whole equation about how old have you got to be, where do you study, and I think it's great, same as this. But the problem I used to have is, for example, I've used InMaps for LinkedIn, and it's really crazy to find out the dots. So yes, you have a great tool, but you cannot use it. In this example you're showing up, how can I use this information in order to get a better startup, a better incubator, a better company, or be a better leadership, have a better leader, I'm sorry.
Well, I can give you the Cincinnati example, where we were using this virtual mirroring by taking the mailbox of the leaders and telling them that they were far too dominant. And they were never delegating. And they were very open to that. I didn't have time, but I could show you many snapshots of dysfunctional teams in that project, and by showing them what didn't work, and by showing them the best practice, it really helped. And we got, in 2 years, we got like, I would say, 16 projects and about 5 new startups in the medical space. And I'm not saying it's because of me, it's because of those leaders. They are the ones that are in the core because they are open, they are great queen bees, but we help them to visualize it and to reward the ones that are starting those new things, and that's what I call cool farming. I'm always asked, how, and that's normally the CEOs of the companies, how can I breed the new queen bee? And the answer is you cannot. You can only create a culture that attracts the bees and then hope that you get some. And that's what we are doing. We are telling here, and it's accepting the fact that you don't have control. In order to gain power, one needs to give away power, and in the startup setting, and if you are the head of this business incubator, or if you are the CEO of BASF and you want to get new businesses started, you need to give your engineers the freedom to pursue that and provide them the environment and the freedom to do that. And I think the company that has really succeeded in doing that is Google, with their 80-20 rule, because they normally, I said, disruptive innovation outside of the company. In those 20% where you have the freedom, you can do disruptive innovation, and then you have to accept the chaos environment. Google is very quick in launching something, but it's even faster in killing it. And try the next one. And either you can put up with that or you can't.
That takes me to the point that whatever you measure, it's not a permanent thing. The question is always dynamic, and you have to be alert at ending things at a good time and at starting new things at a good time.
Yes. You have to be what 99% of humans are not, open for change, willing to throw away everything and to start from scratch. Question yourself all the time.
So you gotta go from cool to hot and then go back.
Yes, it never ends.
Yeah, the problem is when you're hot, you got a lot of things to do.
Of course.
Very, very difficult.
But a company that was masterful in that game is Apple. They have cranked out one cool thing after the other. And as soon as it's cool, they make it hot. And then they do it the next and repeat and repeat, and it works.
Okay.
Okay.
The last question in Santiago for Peter. I think we're ready. Okay, give Peter a round of applause. Thank you, Peter. Muchas gracias, Peter, por esta interesante presentación sobre cómo
generar mayor creatividad y productividad para nuestros emprendedores, y ojalá que muchos de nuestros emprendedores produzcan harta miel y puedan comercializarla en todo el mundo.